Welcome everyone. I'm Gulsara Ahmed, a research scholar at the Department of English in Aligarh Muslim University. I welcome all of you to the 29th edition of DCW Conversation Hour, a monthly, a monthly open conversation by the Deoband community Wikimedia. In this edition, we will be discussing advocacy, policy, and the open knowledge ecosystem, and particularly understand the dynamics associated with the Wikimedia movement and explore the related intersections. Our guest for today is Catalina Frigerio, who works as the Director for Advocacy and Public Policy at Wikimedia Chile. Catalina specializes in technology, privacy, and intellectual property and holds a law degree from the University of Chile. She has a master's degree in economic analysis of law as part of the European Union's Erasmus Mundus program. Additionally, she holds an MPA in digital technology and policy from University College London. I'm sure this is going to be an insightful conversation. Before I invite Catalina to speak, please note that this session is being recorded. With no further ado, over to Catalina.
Thank you very much. I don't know how to present here. Can you help me? How can I?
You might be having an option of shared screen just below.
Uh, Here.
A green button. Green button.
Yes.
Yeah.
Already. Okay.
Okay, we can see your presentation.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Yes. Great. Well, first, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very glad to share with you what my job is and what we do at Wikimedia Chile. As you said, my name is Catalina Frigerio. I'm an Advocacy and Public Policy Director in Wikimedia Chile. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of an advocacy area in Wikimedia Chile, but also I think this applies general in the movement, because this is not always a topic that is known. Sometimes people think that Wikimedia is only a group of editors, and I think we are much more than that. We complement this work with the advocacy area, the advocacy activities that we do. I'm gonna mention some activities that we carry out. How do we approach advocacy? What does advocacy mean? I'm gonna talk also about our first Wiki Advocacy meeting, which was held last year, and we organized here in Wikimedia Chile. What are the current priority topics on our agenda? Because time and resources are scarce, so you need to always have a strategy, an agenda for every year. And I'm also gonna provide some examples of the activities that we carry out, and then we're gonna leave some space for questions. Well, first of all, how was the advocacy area born at Wikimedia Chile? I'm gonna start this by saying that it's not that common to have an advocacy area in Latin America. We are only 2 persons, professionally doing advocacy. So just Wikimedia Chile and also in Argentina. And this position was born because in Chile in 2021, we had a very badly drafted platform regulation bill. As you may be aware of, technology is a really trending topic these days. Platforms are all over the place because they have a lot of power, and we are being informed through platforms. Also, AI is a really hot topic, and that's the reason why legislators and decision makers have this topic on their agenda, because I say it's really sexy, but they don't always have the technical expertise to understand the complexities that the technology, regulating technology brings, because technology is always evolving. And when legislators try to comprehend these type of topics, they just do what populism says, so there was a really bad drafted platform regulation bill, and there was a journalist asking Wikimedia Chile, hey, what is your opinion about this bill? And the internal team, like Wikimedia Chile, they were not able to answer this question. They had like a normal or citizen view, but they lack this technical expertise. So then they realized that that was important to first of all realize what are the important topics for the movement to continue and to work, and also to bring this technical expertise to understandable, like to be understandable for everybody. So that's how this position was born. And also why it's important to have an advocacy area, because as you are aware of, not like in the movement, in the Wikimedia movement, we don't do political proselytism. We tend to be neutral, right? It's one of our main messages, like we're neutral. And this area, advocacy, has sometimes been questioned by the movement. But for the movement to work and to continue with its activities, they need regulations to work. They need people to understand why it's important to have this type of people working towards a positive vision of the internet. And I like to talk about this because, and this is very in line with the message from the foundation that we have also adopted in Wikimedia Chile. We advocate for a positive vision of the internet. And this is also in line with the history of the internet. The internet was born in the 60s with the message of democratizing knowledge, of making knowledge accessible to all everywhere in the world. But now we have seen how this tool, because technology is never neutral, has not been always used for the good, right? And legislators and people are always talking about the negative side of the internet, which is disinformation, a lot of control, surveillance, okay? So we are trying to create laws and regulations to attack or to diminish these negative consequences, but not everybody's talking about the positive vision of the internet. What is the internet that we want? And the Wikimedia model, which brings this positive vision of a digital public good, of bringing knowledge to everybody, of questioning ourselves, what does knowledge mean and how do we build knowledge, is not always known, and it's not always easy to explain. The most popular idea or project is the Wikipedia model, and from there you start to explain. But I've found many times in my experience, like working with legislators or even with allies, with people that we share common goals, that the Wikimedia model is not always easy to explain. So it's important to advocate for this area, to bring this model, and for the laws and regulations to have it in mind, and not to incentivize it, not to prejudice it, right? And it's also necessary to ensure its sustainability. And now we're living a crisis, I think, with AI. Everybody's using ChatGPT, and most people don't know that a lot of information that it's nourishing ChatGPT, it's brings down from this type of projects. So I think we have to question ourselves, how do we get more visibility from the general public and also from decision makers, right? Okay, so what do we advocate for? And this question was important because first we have to understand, how do we work? We are a lot of communities working on different types of digital infrastructures to build knowledge, and knowledge is built through books, through data, through building the history of different communities, right? So what do we need here? We need to see what are the barriers for open knowledge to occur. So this was my first my first task when I entered Wikimedia Chile, because before working here, I didn't I didn't know what Wikimedia was. So first I tried to understand how the movement works. And then I asked myself, like, how is knowledge built? And from there, what are the barriers for this to happen? Okay, so we're trying to build knowledge, of course, in these open platforms, but also knowledge is built in other type of instances, right? So first of all, and the most obvious one are legal and regulatory barriers. And here are intellectual property rights. So of course, IP, it's very, very important for us because we need licenses as open as possible for digital content to be shared. And there we have a really close friendship with Creative Commons, which is the international organization providing standardizing licenses for knowledge to be shared, right? But here we also have, for example, freedom of panorama, which is a big topic in Africa. We had also a bill regarding this. I'm going to talk about it later, where if you take a picture and there's a work in the picture, you need authorization from the author of the work, because if not, it's a reproduction of the work that is being taken the picture of. So IP rights are really important for us. Platform regulation, as I said before, this is very, very complex and difficult because there are different types of platforms. Usually legislators don't have our model inside, and platforms don't always, they are not only in one country, because servers might be somewhere, then content is directed to other different type of persons. So, well, the EU has been leading this, but other countries are trying to copy the regulations. So it's there's a big call to coordinate everybody internationally to regulate these platforms that are that have a model of profit, that are having a lot of power, are also fed by data, which is one of the important topics in the legal and regulatory barriers, because for people to edit these projects, they need freedom, right? So one of the important principles to edit in the platforms is that you don't need to share your name. You now don't even need to share your email. And there has been some changes even about the IP direction. And this is very important because there are political situations where the authorities ask who has been editing content, for example, in Wikipedia. So you need to have protection in order to protect freedom of expression, right? Then you can have all other type of barriers, which are educational, because sometimes people don't think of the internet as an educational tool, right? And here you have digital and media literacy and critical thinking. Here in Wikimedia Chile, we have a specific, aside from the advocacy program, I also work with Patricio, who is directing a program directed to this. He works with schools, with universities, to develop critical thinking, right? Is to teach people how to use these projects and to think critically, right? Not only to be on Instagram and see how you compare to other person, and to present, once again, this positive vision of the internet. And also this has to do with people that, for example, people from the third age, they don't, many times they don't know how to use these platforms, or they don't know how to inform themselves through digital devices. So this also has to do with that, right? You can also have technological barriers, which relate to the digital divide. Now that with the artificial intelligence, the internet is penetrating in a way that is astonishing. fake images are being created, but on the other side, we have lots of people, like 1/3 of the world is not connected to the internet, and you have the digital divide also, like on a physical way, hardware, like being connected to the internet, but also the digital divide, which relates to educational barriers as well, like not knowing how to use a cell phone, for example. And you have also cybersecurity issues, which is increasing so much, and sometimes cybersecurity also relates to political issues, where Wikipedia is being shut down because they don't want people to express themselves in these platforms, so they just shut down the servers and don't allow for Wikipedia to exist in that jurisdiction. And when we advocate, we usually think on a national level, but also in a regional and international level, and that's why I like my profession, because technology doesn't know geographical limits, you know? For example, when a cybersecurity crime is executed, it's very difficult to determine where the crime starts, because the servers are in one place, the person in the computer is in another place, people affected maybe in different places. So even though, as I said before, one country establishes a specific regulation, the internet knows no barriers. So you have to see always what is happening, of course, at a national level, but also regional and international, right? And international, specifically trying to understand how does the international context influences also your national context. And now we're seeing, for example, now a big treaty being discussed. It's not really, the nature is not really a treaty, but it's like a common understanding of how the internet and technology should be regulated. And this is being discussed it's now in an implementation phase in the United Nations with the Global Digital Compact. I don't know if you have heard about it, but the United Nations are trying to make everybody agree on a common ground of what is the importance, what should be considered important when facing digital technologies. Okay, so of course the text, you read it as is really nice, but you have to consider also local circumstances. And it's not the same to implement this type of international instrument in Chile that in Europe, for example, or in the US, where the political situation is a little bit sensitive in this moment, right? Okay, so what type of activities do we carry out? How do we do this? And first, we have a preventive and a reactive stance. This means that, for example, what happened when this position was born was reactive, okay? So something in the everyday life happened, something that was not foreseen, and then Wikimedia Chile reacted. So that's what I refer to when I say reactive, is something that was not foreseen. And then preventive is what we do with time. And I'm going to give some examples of this. We do communication campaigns, okay? So, and this might be preventive or reactive. But for example, if we wanna work towards a bill that was published and we didn't know, this communication campaign can be reactive. But for example, on April, we celebrated the International IP World Day, and we did a communication campaign, we prepared an event. So this was preventive because, of course, IP is something really important for us, right? We also do strategic alliances. So one of my first tasks at Wikimedia Chile was to, as I said before, understand how does the movement work, and what is actually the movement? Because when I talk to my friends or my family about the movement, they they find it interesting or funny that I talk about the movement. But I first had to understand how do we work internally and where are we located in society, in the Chilean society, and also locally, at the regional level, and also internationally. And from there, understand which are our allies. So what type of institutions share common goals with us? And for example, here in Chile, we have Derechos Digitales, which is like digital rights. It's also an NGO which has a very strong presence in Latin America. And they do a lot of advocacy, but not really locally, but they do it at a Latin American level. So they are our very close allies, and we have a very close communication channel. And it's very useful to have them as allies because they have more resources to be covering Latin American topics that might be of interest for us, where we, as I said before, only me in Chile and another person in Argentina have a professional staff dealing with the advocacy topics in Latin America. And on the other side, for example, we in Chile are the only organization which promote and defend open culture, which is really important, as you know, for the Wikimedia movement. And in Chile, there's no other organization talking about opening collections in museums, for example. Or sometimes this organization, Derechos Digitales, has supported us, but they don't actually have it as a priority. So in that area, we are a strategic ally for them. So you can see synergies there, right? We also meet with decision makers and legislators. This will depend on the proceeding in each country. In Europe, I know it's really regulated. Here in Chile, we have a lobby law where you can check who is, depending on which topic do you want to deal with. For example, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I want to talk with this person, and you ask for an appointment, and they have the duty to meet with you. It can also function a little bit out of they use these platforms, and legislators, they usually have people assessing them. So people that are specialists on a topic, and you don't usually communicate with the legislator, but you present, for example, a report or a minute with your position with the legislators. In Wikimedia Chile, as I told you, we started with this advocacy area not so long ago. So we are in the process of being known, okay? So we have accomplished meetings with decision makers and legislators, but what our next objective is not for us to be asking them if they want to meet with us. Is for them to call us because of our expertise in different areas that are of interest for them when dealing with a specific topic. For example, platform regulation or open culture. We also participate in public consultations. In Chile, we have a law for citizen participation, and also they use this instrument quite often, where they publish, for example, different type of strategies. I'm going to give some examples later about a public consultation we participated, I think, in 2023. And we also prepare research reports. And this is also a way of doing advocacy because we, as I said before, act preventively. We do research reports because in some areas that are strategic for Wikimedia Chile and the movement, we have to know what our position is, okay? So for example, now a really trending and hot, sexy topic, it's artificial intelligence. So we need to be prepared for what is our position regarding this topic. And sometimes when things happen and you don't foresee them, you don't have enough time to do research about it. And we also try to be careful about what we say and how we say it and when we say it. So preparing these reports, it's important because you already have the grounding and knowledge for what will your position be if something happens, right? Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the first Wiki Advocacy meetup, which was held in Chile last year. So as you know, in the movement, you have a lot of working groups towards different topics. And we realize in our experience doing advocacy that there were many people doing advocacy for open knowledge, but they don't usually have an instance to communicate. Well, there has been instances and the foundation has been pushing towards this, but we thought this could be strengthened. And as the same as the Glam Wiki, I don't know if you have participated or known about the Glam Wiki, which is the meeting that is held to celebrate open culture, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. We thought about something similar, but regarding people that do advocacy, okay? And one of the biggest challenges in the movement in general is the governance, right? Because we are all working towards promoting open knowledge, but we are so many and we don't depend on one organization. So we're different communities governed by their own rules. So this makes it difficult because, as I said before, it's not the same to advocate for something in Chile that in Argentina or maybe in Indonesia. But the idea of this Wiki Advocacy meetup was to create synergies and to see what are our common points, right? Because sometimes, I don't know, in my experience, you need resources and it's not always, sometimes it's a little bit messy. Where can I find, I don't know, the report where the IP rights, like for example, the foundation did a report with all the, I think it's cases, advocacy cases with IP rights, and you cannot find it, etc., etc. So we wanted to create synergies, and we applied to a fund. We celebrated the first Wiki Advocacy meetup because the UNESCO last year celebrated its Freedom of Expression Day on May 2 in Chile. So a lot of people, important people, which are related to the movement, came to Chile. We also gave 20 scholarships. We opened, I think it was like 5 more scholarships for people from out of the movement, like people not necessarily from Wikimedia, but that share common goals. And well, people also, of course, attended the UNESCO conference, but we also did a workshop to see what kind of tools do we need it and which were our common goals, right? And it was very interesting, the findings out of this this meeting, which we hope might repeat again. It's one of our desires for someone else to organize it. But what was more important is that the Wiki Advocacy Network was created. So now we are meeting every 2 months with the Wiki Advocacy Network, which were the people that came to Chile. When some of them that were not able to join, but anyway, that they had some advocacy experience. Because some people don't really understand what advocacy means. So yeah, it's some experience with legislators or decision makers and working towards the idea that I expressed before. And this advocacy network now created working groups. We discussed what are the priorities for the group. As I said before, it's not always easy because we even though we share a common goal, it's not always the priorities are not always the same. But the group, there are now 3 working groups. One of them is IP, which is IP in a broad sense, because IP, as I said, is one of the most important topics for the movement, and it's being highly challenged because of artificial intelligence. There's another group creating a specific pagers on topics that are important for the open knowledge movement, like different communication pieces directed to decision makers, which are simple to understand and that are common to everybody. And the third group, which I am leading, is building a common language. Because as I said at the beginning of the presentation, I think one of the most difficult missions is to explain the Wikimedia model. And I found myself when I'm on my family meetings, like, and Catalina, what do you do? And I try to explain what's the movement, and then my husband looks at me like, please stop. Because it's not easy to explain it. So we are creating 2 products in this working group. We will create one that is directed to a more technical audience, explaining what is the Wikimedia movement in a gender species, from a gender species perspective, like what is the relationship between digital public goods with digital commons? Why is Wikipedia a digital public good and why is it important? What is the relation with open source software, etc. And another product that will be directed for people that don't have a technical expertise, more to common citizens, people from the movement or outside the movement, like my mom, for them to understand in a short, simple manner what are we and why is it important to promote this type of projects. Okay. Okay, so as I told you before, we have realized that resources are scarce, and in the beginning, as we were not well known, we tried to be everywhere, but then we realized we have to be more strategic. And this every year we create a planification. We plan our year, and these are the priority topics on our agenda for this year. Okay, so we invest all of our time on this, and we decided that it is intellectual property, and this has mainly 2 areas. The first one is artificial intelligence, which I said is a really trending topic. Now there's a bill being discussed. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later when I give some examples. And also culture, because one of the most important works that we do at Wikimedia, I think in general, but in Chile is really important for us, is to promote culture and to promote open culture, right? Digitalization of collections, and to organize activities in different territories. And for that, our experience tells us that in Chile, at least, people don't know about intellectual property. They are not aware at all. And even cultural institutions, they publish works that are under the public domain with IP rights. So they say this work is under IP rights, please do not reproduce it, etc. And it's not easy, but we are doing a lot of work to change that mindset. Okay, and also regarding artificial intelligence, we are now working a lot with journalists, because artificial intelligence is changing the way we inform ourselves. And of course, journalism is living a big crisis because of it. And this is happening not only in Chile, but also around the world. There are lawsuits also in Chile, but because usually, for example, the platforms direct the content to newspapers, and then newspapers don't make the revenues they need to sustain themselves. Also, some journalists are asking for IP rights to be recognized for their content because their job is being used on AI in ChatGPT, for example. So it's really complex, and there are many important topics there to see how do we continue sharing information and what type of information, right? And here it's important also to know what I said before. It's not only preventive and reactive, it's also you have to check on these topics on a national, regional, and international level. So, for example, in culture, which is also one of our priorities, we are closely working with Creative Commons for recommendation on open culture for UNESCO to adopt a recommendation on open culture, because UNESCO has a recommendation on open science and on open knowledge, but they don't have a recommendation on open culture. Probably because of what I have said so far, which is open culture is not always easy. There are technical barriers, economical barriers, misunderstandings, but from Wikimedia Chile, we're working closely with Creative Commons for UNESCO to adopt this instrument. It cannot be born out of civil society, but civil society can push member states to adopt this recommendation. So, and also Chile, and this is very in line with Chile having last year, Chile published a national strategy for digital heritage. So I'm saying this because it's a good example of having the local context, but also the international context. So you have to be continuously reading what is happening, right? And then we have freedom of expression on the internet, which is kind of a broad topic, but we thought about this name because it brings all what affects what is important for us to build knowledge, right? Platform regulation. We also had a commission created in Chile in 2023 to, like an expert commission, to give an opinion of what measures could be taken to deal with disinformation. And they work really hard. Even they called Amalia Toledo, which is the lead public policy specialist in Latin America from the foundation, to give her opinion, but then they didn't do anything with that report. Yeah, so this topic is also important for us. But as I said before, we are always careful of what we say, when we say it, and how we say it, right? It's important for us to always bear in mind that we are not doing political proselytism, and we have to be careful about our image and the information we share we share. Okay, so here I have some examples. I think I named this before. We had we did a communication campaign, and this is not right. This is freedom of panorama, not freedom of expression, sorry. We did a communication campaign against a bill that sought to restrict freedom of panorama in Chile. As I said before, freedom of panorama is a restriction, is a provision in the IP law where when you are reproducing an image, okay, so usually maybe taking pictures, you have a work of art. Think of a, I don't know, a park where you have a sculptor, and this sculptor is subject to intellectual property rights. If you want to take a picture of that park, if you don't have freedom of panorama, you should ask for permission from the title holder of the work. from the sculptor. So this, of course, restricts a lot the projects in Wikimedia. There has been really strong shocking campaigns against this, where some Wikimedia pages were left with a black image of the work to see like how this affects liberty of uploading images. And in Chile, we had one bill that nobody was talking about because, as I said before, there are not many institutions talking about this in Chile. And this was before the before there was a recession, the legislatory chambers. So we did a very strong communication campaign. We asked photographers to join. We asked filmmakers. We talked with journalists. So we published a column. We also did a campaign in Instagram. And also we presented a minute to one of the persons assessing the legislator that presented this bill. So finally, it didn't continue this bill. So we consider it a very successful campaign. Then we also have a working group and minutes regarding the mining and database exception in the AI bill. AI, one of the important topics for AI is the data mining, the mining and database exception. So when the content, because for AI to be trained, you need to put input to the AI, right? Which is data. And this data might be subject to intellectual property rights. So there is uncertainty if when you train AI, if you would be infringing IP rights. Different legislations have different criteria. Some people say here in Chile, you wouldn't be because you're not actually reproducing the work, but you are taking data. So you have many different, pictures of paintings. So you're not reproducing each painting, but you're taking data out of each painting. But currently there's an exception being discussed in the Chilean Congress for text and data mining to not be considered an infringement, right? We kind of made a bad copy of the European Union directive. I'm not going to get into the details, but we started discussing it internally, and then we said, okay, we should create a working group on this because there are many positions, different positions, and it's kind of complex. It's being discussed. Well, the European Union already has an exception, Japan and Singapore, and it's being discussed in different countries. It also relates to how you develop innovation in each country. So it's really important. And we created a working group, and we have people from Google participating. We have researchers from 3 different universities. We have also the Derechos Digitales, Digital Rights, the other NGO. So the conversations have been really interesting. And now, out of this conversation, we created an internal minute with our position. Okay, so we're still participating in the working group, and this is work in progress, so it's still happening. We're gonna do an event to discuss the AI bill publicly, and we will also present a minute to the people assessing the legislator. But out of this discussion, we formed our position, because at the beginning we were not sure what our position was from this text and data mining exception. Then we have the participation in citizen dialogues regarding the heritage bill. The heritage law is being currently discussed, and as I said before, here in Chile we have a law which incentivizes citizen participation. Well, one of the tools is this citizen dialogues, where you open the space for people to get together and discuss different topics, and then they collect all the findings from these different circles, and they introduced it to the bill. So we also participated in that. We also, as I said before, participated in the public consultation of the National Digital Heritage Strategy, which is already being published, and they didn't consider, they didn't talk about IP rights, and they didn't mention open access. So this was very interesting because, as I said before, authorities don't always have this vision, and they don't consider this position when regulating this type of topics. And one last example is the organization of the Wikiglam Southern Corn. This happened at the beginning of May. We did this with Wikimedistas of Uruguay, Argentina, and the CDF. And this also relates to what I said before. Wikiglam stands for Galleries, Libraries, Archives, and Museums from the ArchiveCom. So we talked about open access, and this was like a pre-setting for the activities carried out in the context of UNESCO adopting this instrument regarding a recommendation on open culture, right? So we participated from Chile, but we invited authorities that are important in these other countries for them to have like a regional perspective on open culture. And here I have some pictures. As I told you, we did a round table on IP Day. This was on April. This was the Glam Week in Uruguay. We also participate in presentations about AI and open culture, and so on and so forth. We also publish a lot of columns in the newspaper. For example, January, we also have mapped out important days for the movement. And January is the public domain. I think it's the 1st of January, is public domain day. So we published a column in an important newspaper, local newspaper, talking about this topic. So that is, thank you very much. Muchas gracias. And now I'm gonna open some space for questions. Good. Do you have any questions?
Hello, Catalina. Thanks for this wonderful presentation. It was very insightful for me to hear about your experiences at Wikimedia Chile. My question is about, since your experience at Wikimedia Chile and advocacy outside of the Wikimedia ecosystem, how would you advise the structured affiliates of the Wikimedia Foundation and the groups that are a bit new to open knowledge dissemination about getting into advocacy work? A brief advice. How should they begin the process of doing larger good? Thank you.
Yes, that's a good question. I think first you have to map, like understand which are your priorities. Because as I said before, we as a movement cannot sustain if we don't have proper rules for it to function, right? So with that in mind, considering people are interested, because I think your question is for people that already have an interest in advocacy or people that are not sure about if to advocate for the movement.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. If people have interest, my advice would be first to map and understand which are the priority areas and consider also like the resources you have, because, for example, this information is an important topic for us, but we didn't step inside this commission that I talked about because it was really, really polemic. It was all over the news. People thought it was like a truth commission, which was kind of Venezuela saying the truth, that it's only from the group. And for us, it was at the beginning, we said like, oh, why didn't they call us to join this commission? But then we said, oh, it's even better because now we're not exposed communicationally, right? So I think you have to see what are your priorities, considering what are your resources, and always taking care of your image. Like, how are you going to be positioned among allies and in the media? That makes sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi. Hello. Yeah. My question
Hello.
is how can I be part of the advocacy network you're talking about in Wikimedia Chile? So is this something that was started by Wikimedia Chile? And as an individual, how can I be a part of that? Or I need to be associated with some kind of Wikimedia group, maybe some user group or thematic group, and then can I be a part of that? How it works?
Yes. Yes, usually the network is conformed by people that already have experience in advocacy, at least some, but it's open for anyone who wants to join, belonging to any type of group. So if you already belong to a user group, you can join.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
If you want, you can send me an email, and I can help you.
Okay.
Because the person coordinating that, the foundation has an advocacy area. Like, depending from the legal area, there's an advocacy area, and there's there's a specialist of every region, like geographical region, and there's also Francisca Putz. She's based in the UK. She's Austrian, but she's based in the UK, and she is the person in charge of communicating the movement with the foundation. She's the one like establishing that channel. So she's the one that sends all the emails and invites us to different events, and the one that coordinates the meeting for the advocacy network. But you are very much welcome to join. Yes.
Yeah, thanks again.
Welcome. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I think we are on time.
Okay, thank you, Catalina. It was wonderful hearing from you. Thanks to everyone who attended and asked questions. We look forward to seeing you in our next conversation. Thank you so much.
Great. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.